like to welcome back Laura Davies, a Golf in Dubai ambassador. Laura's making her 7th appearance in the Amiga Dubai Ladies Masters this week. I'd like to ask how it feels to be back in Dubai.
Yeah, it's lovely. You know, when you land at the airport, you're treated like royalty, which is always very nice, and get to the hotel and everyone's so nice, and then come out here to a golf course, which I love. Weather's always perfect, so I can't think of any bad things about this week.
And what are your thoughts on the tournament in general?
Yeah, looking forward to it. Looks like a strong field as usual. It's always tough to win this one. Obviously, you have to play some very good golf, putt well. Yeah, I think it's a good field. And December, obviously, Shang's just won, and she's back to defend, which is great for the tournament. And she'll probably be the one to beat, I imagine. Her and Stacey, obviously, number 1 or 2 in the world. I'm not quite sure where she is now, but they'll be tough to beat.
Okay, taking questions.
How's your game at the moment, and what are your targets for this week? Have you got any personal targets that you want to achieve here?
Well, obviously to win, that's the number one thing, and my game's pretty good. I feel like I'm playing well. Like I mentioned, putting, it's not quite, it let me down last year and it's let me down again this year. Trying to put 3 new putters. As soon as this is finished, I'm going to go to the putting green and try and work out which one's coming around this week. But long game wise, I'm feeling really good, really confident.
Sorry. How difficult is it to get that feeling back on the greens then? You know, what's the process that you go through to try and get that part of your game back to where it should be?
Well, I went into my club room and I looked at the 3 roughest looking putters, which meant they must have been the 3 over the years that I've used the most, and that was the way I went about it. I can't remember when I used these particular ones. I think one of them was when I had my really good run in the mid-90s, and so that's going to be the first one to have a go. But putting was my stroke. Everyone says my stroke looks good. I feel like my stroke's good, but my pace is probably a little bit out. So I'm going to go with a putter that hopefully gets the ball coming off a little bit softer. I tend to be overhitting with the pace, and that's the sort of thing that I'm going to try and work on.
Is putting somewhere you've struggled here before? What have been the reasons in the past?
No, these greens are great. I feel like if you have to obviously play well, but I feel like I've putted well around on these greens, so that's a good sign of it. There's not much to them, which is what I like. I don't like these huge, massive greens they've started building. There's a couple of big greens out there, but overall they're really fair greens, and if you start reading them correctly, and you're obviously putting well, you can make a lot of putts.
So, before, how have you fared here before? And
well, the first couple, I think I finished 2nd, 3rd, 4th the first 3 years, and then I missed the cut about 3 years ago, which was very distressing. Last year, I think I played pretty well, but I had 1 bad round as I remember it, so I haven't been in contention the last couple of years. But early on I was in contention the first 3 years I played it. Like I said, it's a course I like. There's lots, you can take a few chances on the par 5s, which is something I would like to do. The par 3 is very strong. It's just a really good test for ball strikers. I think it's usually it comes out where good ball strikers do well around here, which is good.
Laura, can we just talk a bit more about the field? Obviously this year I don't believe Lexi Thompson is not going to be here, I don't believe Michelle's going to be here, but you've got a whole raft of Solheim Cup players, and Charlie will be here, just how do you assess it? Maybe it doesn't have the stellar big names from stateside, but it still could be quite a competitive event regardless without.
I think now we've got Stacey in the field, that's one of the bigger American names we've ever had. So, Lexi's obviously won it, and it's a shame she's not back here to try and win it again. But the tour school in America has cost us quite a few big names. Leanne Pace, Rebecca Flood, artist, who's just won a tournament a few months ago, or a couple of months ago. But overall, I think the strength of the field, you said yourself, Charlie Hull's here, and she's obviously an exciting new prospect, and everyone wants to see her play, so I think she'll have a very good chance right here, because like I said, it's a good course for high ball strikers, which she's obviously won. But I think field strength-wise, it's very high at the top. There's a lot of strength at the top of the field, so that's always a good thing for the galleries. They want to see the Stacey Lewis's in this world, so it's good she's there.
The money list is wrapped up, isn't it? Does that distract away from this event?
It's a shame. It's always nice if the last event comes down to the last few holes, like I had with Leanne a couple of years ago, and then last year it was very close between, I think,
Carlotta
and
Mason.
yeah, that's right. So that adds an extra flavour. But on the other hand, it's nice that this tournament stands out now, that everyone's out to win it. So you're not worrying about money lists because we know we've won all that. So yeah, it's more concentration purely on winning this event, which is obviously a good thing for this event. But it is a little bit, I guess, disappointing. There's no money. The Rookie of the Year thing's still up for grabs, and that'd be interesting.
Could it do with like a final series like the men's, or does it need to the money distribution? Does it need to be panned out so that I know you can't?
It's difficult because we get big tournaments like this one, and then we get good tournaments that haven't got the big money in Europe for the rest of the year. So if you win the Evian Masters, you've almost certainly won the money list, like Suzanne won the Evian. It's a very difficult equation really, because that's just the way it is on the women's game. But I think this is an unusual year that it's not come down to a bit of a shootout. But I don't necessarily think, it'd be lovely to have a final series, Abu Dhabi, Dubai, all the big places out here would be fantastic for us. But I don't necessarily think it needs it. It's a good standalone event as it is.
Could you just talk a little please about Charlie, just what you've seen of her and your impressions of her? As you say, she's had a phenomenal year and Solheim Cup, etc. So how do you see her progressing and where she'll stand in the next couple of years?
Yeah, well, I haven't really heard of it. I'd heard of her, sort of the name roughly when she was an amateur, and then her very first tournament, I was, after 2 rounds, we were paired together. And, I thought, this would be interesting. She shot 65, I shot 71, I think. So 6 shots later, I'm thinking, yeah, this girl can play. She finished, that was her very first game, and she backed it up with 4 more seconds. So she opened out her career with 5 seconds, which I don't think that'll ever be repeated again, men or women, it won't happen again. And she showed her personality at the Solheim Cup, was the star of the show, and probably won the Solheim Cup. I know they all played great, but I think the momentum Charlie put into it for the rest of the team. And you're going to hear about her more and more. I think she needs to get the win sooner rather than later, because obviously she had another chance last week. I wasn't in India, but I was watching Keely, because she's a good friend now. I get on really well with her in Dallas and the moment she comes out. But it'd be nice to see her win one. Hopefully not at my expenses, but I'd like to keep her if they won more. But if she can get that win, I don't even think with her mentality, I don't think she'd be worrying about that. I just think it'd be nice for her now.
What's impressed you whenever you saw her at close quarters? What was it about her game that impressed you most?
Well, she had one particular shot on, it was a long par 5 in Morocco, about number 13 or 14, and she put it up against this tree. And you see most of the girls that aren't as strong, because Charlie's very strong. She's not a big girl at all, but she's very strong. And she manoeuvred her body enough that what she tried here, and all of a sudden she's hit this low 3-iron with a 3 or a 4-iron with a fade, like just short of the green, got up and down and made a birdie. And I could just tell from that point, she doesn't just do the normal thing. If she's got a shot to go for, then she'll go for it. And that was the most impressive thing, I think, of that whole week. Well, I only played the 1 round, but like I said, she shot the 65, but that shot stood out for me.
Yeah, just maybe an assessment of women's golf coming up through the ranks. Obviously, you've got Charlie, Lydia Ko, you have China as well, perhaps going for the Olympics, so they're going to have a whole raft of youngsters probably going through the ranks. So it's looking good for women's golf internationally going forward, I would assume.
Absolutely. You see a lot of young guys coming through now, that young 15-year-old, but it was the women first that came through with the really young players that contended straight away. And you've mentioned all the ones, and there's a few more out there that are not far behind them, and you're going to start hearing their names. When I turned pro, I think I was 21, and that was considered a bit daring in those days, 21 turning pro. But now, 15, 16, they're out there on tour, and they're not just competing and making out their numbers, they're winning events. Lydia winning the Canadian Open back-to-back is ridiculous, really. She's obviously going to be a huge star. She already is, but when she gets full-time on the LPGA, she's going to be huge, and Charlie, I think, as well. So it's a very good state. Women's golf is in really good state.
And just an assessment of your year. You finished, you've been consistent throughout the year, but perhaps you haven't shot maybe the low numbers, and that hasn't come through in what you've earned on the money list. So how do you assess it?
Well, yeah, that's the thing. I feel like I've played some really good golf this year. I've missed way too many cuts, quite a lot of them by 1 or 2 shots, which is heartbreaking at this level, because if you could just get into the weekend, you can make up ground. I think I finished 118th on the LPGA money list, and I'm 48 on our money list at the moment, and that's just not good enough, because I know you know, just because you get a bit older doesn't mean you can't still compete week in, week out. I've played a lot of events this year, and it's just pure disappointment. But obviously, if I can have a good week this week, I can get well inside the top 10 on the money list, which is the good side. And then looking forward to next year, Australia on the 9th of January. So my enthusiasm for it is still right there. So if I could just hark back to the putting again, it makes all the difference. It really does.
And you mentioned your age. I won't bring it up.
It's not a problem, everyone gets older.
Yeah, you obviously hit a landmark year this year, only a few months ago. Have you had time to, are you the type of person to reflect upon what you've achieved in your life, in your golf career, and what you want to do going forward? Or?
Yeah, no, I never look back. All I want to do is win my next tournament. I remember what my last tournament win was, but I want to know what my next one is. So one day when I sit back and I don't play as much, because I always think I'll play a few tournaments on the European Tour. And I remember they can't get rid of me now, so I can play on for a few more years, even when I'm not competitive, but I see myself out here for at least another 5-6 years trying to win tournaments. And that's all you can really ask for from a pro. They're always trying to win and trying to compete and do their best. So I certainly don't see myself getting near the end yet.
What are the goals in that then that you've still set yourself, Hall of Fame obviously one of them as well?
Yeah, I mean if I had a goal it would be to win a major championship, because that would get me into the Hall of Fame, and that would shut up a few doubters that think probably once you get to this age you should probably scurry away. I mean, Fred Couples, I always try to use him, or Vijay Singh, I use them as an example. People don't ask them when they're retiring, they're both well over 50, so it's slightly different in the women's game. I think there's always that question. But yeah, all I want to do is win, and I really, really want to win more on the LPGA. I haven't competed, I haven't got close for nearly 18 months to winning an event, and the trouble is